Okay, so get this. A company is found guilty of intentionally, willfully breaking the law. A court orders them to hand over every single penny of profit they made from their misconduct, all $43 million of it. But then the company just turns around and says, sorry, we don't have any profits to give you. We have zero. How on earth is that possible? Well, that is the multi-million-dollar question that went all the way to the Supreme Court. $43 million. That is a staggering amount of money. And it's what a court ordered one company, Dewberry Group, to pay a competitor for what it called intentional, willful, and in bad faith trademark infringement. Now, we're not talking about a simple fine here. This was what's called a disgorgement, in order to surrender all the profits they'd earned from their wrongdoing.
But here's the twist. Despite this massive judgment, the defendant, Dewberry Group, claimed they had nothing to pay. I mean, according to their own books, they'd been operating at a loss for decades. So where did all the money go? And how can a court order a company to pay profits that, on paper anyway, just don't exist?
To really get to the bottom of this, we have to look at how the defendant's business was set up. You see, the lower court saw it as a kind of corporate shell game, one that was cleverly designed to separate the work from the money. So who are the players in this drama? On one side, you've got Dewberry Engineers. They're the plaintiff, the ones who own the Dewberry trademark. On the other side is Dewberry Group, the defendant, who infringed on that trademark. But here's the kicker, and this is the detail that changes everything. Dewberry Group doesn't serve the public. It only provides services to its own affiliate companies.
Okay, so let's follow the money here. Dewberry Group does all the actual work. You know, the marketing, the legal stuff, the finances. But when a client pays rent, the money doesn't go to them. No, it goes directly to one of about 30 affiliate companies. And these affiliates, they have no employees, yet they're the ones booking tens of millions in profits. Meanwhile, Dewberry Group, the company doing all the work, charges its own affiliates rock-bottom rates, reports a loss, and only stays afloat because its owner keeps pumping cash into it. You see what's happening? The work and the profits were kept in legally separate buckets.
And this whole funky setup created the central legal question. Should the courts treat this entire operation as one big enterprise, or are they truly separate companies? The answer would decide whether that $43 million award was actually going to stick. The district court, the first court to look at this, focused on what they called economic reality. They basically said, look, let's be real. Dewberry Group's infringing work is what generated all the profits for its affiliates, so we should treat them all as a single entity. For that court, it was really the only way to stop the entire enterprise from just sidestepping the consequences.
But that ruling ran headfirst into a massive fundamental principle of corporate law. And that principle is this: when you incorporate a company, you create a new legal person, one that's separate from its owners and separate from its sister companies. Even if they have the same owner, they are distinct entities with their own rights. This fundamental conflict is exactly what sent this case rocketing up to the Supreme Court.
So what would the highest court in the land do? Right? Would they side with the lower court's economic reality view, or would they stick to this long-standing principle of corporate separateness? The entire $43 million award was hanging in the balance.
The decision was, well, it was swift and it was absolute. The Supreme Court unanimously threw out the $43 million award. Every single justice agreed on this. Justice Kagan, who wrote the opinion for the court, put it about as simply as you possibly can. The law says a plaintiff can recover the defendant's profits. The defendant was Dewberry Group. That's it. Period. The affiliates were not defendants in the case, so you can only look at the profits of the actual defendant, not the defendant plus its buddies. It was a very straightforward, literal reading of the law. The entire decision really rested on this one incredibly powerful concept: corporate separateness. This legal shield is absolutely fundamental to how business is done in America. It allows for complex structures, and the court basically said that unless you have a really, really compelling reason to ignore it, like proving the whole thing is a fraud, you have to respect that shield.
But hold on, because this is where the story gets another really interesting twist. The Supreme Court didn't just let Dewberry Group walk away completely. They essentially told the lower court, you went about this the wrong way, and then they sent the case back down, pointing out 3 other legal doors the plaintiff might still be able to open.
So the court left 3 doors open. First, the law allows for a just award. So could a court use its discretion to award a fair amount even if the defendant's official profit is 0? Second, could the courts dig past the official accounting to find the true financial gain? You know, what did they really earn from this? And third, could the plaintiff try to pierce the corporate veil?
Now, that's a really high legal bar to clear, but it would let them argue the entire structure was just a sham designed to hide wrongdoing. The Supreme Court didn't answer these questions. They kicked them back to the lower courts to figure out.
And Justice Sotomayor wrote a separate opinion just to hammer this point home. She agreed with the ruling, but she wanted to make it crystal clear that corporate separateness is not a license for clever accounting. She argued that courts don't have to be blind to what's really going on, and can investigate if profits were unfairly shifted around. As she put it, fairness, equity, looks at substance, not just the form.
So after all this legal back and forth, what's the big takeaway from this case of the $43 million loophole?
Well, it all comes down to this classic legal battle: form versus substance. The Supreme Court upheld the legal form. These are separate companies and the law has to respect that. But the fight isn't over. The case now goes back to the lower courts to investigate the substance, to try and figure out what financial gain the defendant, Dewberry Group, truly made, even if it's not on their official books.
And that really leaves us with a final, big-picture question. Is this principle of corporate separateness a vital shield that protects investment and lets businesses organize themselves efficiently? Or, as we kind of see in this case, can it become a clever legal loophole that allows wrongdoers to shuffle money around and just escape the consequences? The Supreme Court has drawn its line in the sand, but the battle over where that line really is, well, that is far from over.